So this week's game that I'm looking at is from an S&T magazine. This one right here, S&T 172. It's called Molotovs War. I believe it came out in the mid-90s, and it's basically a game on the Winter War. Designed by John Desch. He's done a number of designs. Another one of his that I liked was from S&T 152 called Case Green, which is on the hypothetical invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1938. So this is a very interesting game. The counter graphics are a little bit cartoonish, I think, and I know there were complaints in the past about this. They were done by Beth Kuhlman, I think, and the map is a Mark Simonich map from very reminiscent of all of his 1990s era maps. It's good enough. I liked it. Once I start playing the game, I get absorbed in the game, and the graphics don't bother me as much. This has game turns that represent about 10 days each. There's about 3 turns per month, and the game goes through the period of the Winter War. There are some special rules in here. The Finns have screens, and a little bit later I'll talk about what those represent. The Finns also have fortifications, and they do have an air unit to counter the air unit's ground attacks of the Soviet Union. The Soviets also have air. They have more air support than the Finns can counter, so they will use this to affect their combats. They can do airdrops. I don't think I recommend this. I think it's not a good period for Soviets trying to attempt to airdrop without losing the entire unit. There are rules for Soviet tanks, which if they're involved in a combat will shift it in the attack's favor. There is also a special rule for an engineer tank that will be useful, especially in attacking the Mannerheim line. There is rules for shock combat, where the Soviets can employ improved tactics that will, help them in their attacks, will cause more losses, actually, to everyone. There are rules for the Baltic Fleet, which can bombard in a combat if it's along the coastline of Finland, and there are also rules for amphibious attacks. But a special event has to come up for those to be employed. And there are supply rules, essentially the typical supply rules that if you're out of supply, everything's halved. And so these are all excellent Chrome features of this game that make it a little bit more enjoyable. There's also the opportunity to have political events. They're not all political, but they are random events that can occur during the turn that will affect play for that turn. So all of this made to me a very interesting game. This is something I'm going to take a little bit closer look at from a replay that I did of this game. So I'm going to bring you down into the map, and we'll take a look at how this game plays through. So turn 1 starts on December, I'm saying 1 through 10 of 1939. And basically, the burden of attack is on the Soviets, and they're coming east to west into the northern central part of Finland. And then there is a potential, there's a southern attack into Mannerheim's line, which is going to be difficult to be able to get across. So on turn 1, the Soviets do run into a Finnish screen unit, which I'll talk about for a minute. The Finns have 4 screen units. They're not really units, but they do represent obstacles. And they can be placed in a wooded hex or a forest hex. And most of the time you're going to place this on a road. And it does represent possibly a detachment of forces that can harass the Soviets, or it may represent obstacles that are set up to stop them, or destroying the terrain, bridges or things that would make it difficult to get through. But it might also represent more abstract things like poor Soviet leadership or limited intelligence and things that would cause friction on the Soviet army to make it difficult for them to make their advances. So the Finns have 4 of these units that can be placed, and when a Soviet unit enters into the same hex as the screen, it has to stop, and then the screen unit is removed and able to be redeployed the next turn. So it represents these obstacles. The Soviets also have air support that are mainly used as ground support. I think they have 4 units here, and only one of them can operate north of the Arctic Circle line. The other 3 have to be south of that. The Finns also have an air force, but it's basically 1 air unit, and it is only used really in defense, so it can negate any of the Soviet air units, the choice of the Finn player. So that's how these are used. You can see in this first photo, the Soviet attack is crossing the border of Finland along these roads going through the central region. And you can see the Finns have a very limited defense set up in a town in the south by the 35th Infantry Regiment, and then a little bit north east of them is the 36th Regiment, which is blocking in the woods terrain. And of course, in that picture, you can see the Soviets are successfully using an air unit for combat support. Now I'm moving on to turn 2, which represents perhaps December 11th through 20 of 1939. I am using the optional rules in this game, and one of them is for political events, which isn't all political. For example, the first event that I draw this time is foul weather. And there are a number of effects that come from foul weather. This is what the rule book says. Number 1, no aircraft may fly this turn. No amphibious assaults may occur this turn. And for the Soviets, they have a number of restrictions. North of the Arctic line, any units that are off-road, automatically out of supply. And if a unit is not off-road, it may move off-road. Let me say that again. No unit not off-road may move off-road. So they're stuck. The cost of road movement is double for the Soviets. Motorized units and tanks can't move. I presume they're frozen. And all units suffer an adverse 1-column shift on the combat results table, whether it's attack or defense. So it's fairly severe effects on the Soviet player. Still, the Soviet units do try to continue their advance. They are on somewhat of a time limit, and they run into some Finnish screening units near the town of Kola. And you can see that, I think, on the last picture shows that town. Moving on to turn 3, which represents December 21 to 31 of 1939. The weather clears up. This is automatic. The foul weather result lasts only the 1 turn. And this time the Soviet army decides to continue its attacks and is focusing on the Mannerheim fortifications. These are a formidable obstacle. And this attack doesn't go well for the Soviets. One of the reasons why in this game is that the Soviet units are fighting on an inferior combat results table. I think until about turn 5 or so, they attack on a table that shifts the combat odds 1 column to the left, And that is simulating the fact that the Soviets were not really ready for this war. They have poor tactics still. The leadership is poor. They're inexperienced, and their equipment is failing. So for the first few turns, they are penalized in their attacks. Now, the Finnish army doesn't have this penalty at all. They're 100% prepared. Now we go to turn 4. It's January 1 through 10 of 1940. And the Soviets still have the burden of attack, and they are trying to push forward. And in the picture here, you can see the fighting in the heavy forested area near Kola. And finally, the Soviets do attack the 37th Infantry Regiment, and they are able to capture the town of Kola at this stage. A little bit farther north, and I don't have a picture of this, is a battle of Suomussalmi, and the Soviets do continue to try to attack here, and they lose their tanks, of course. I think these are probably mostly T-26s at this stage. Anyway, that completes the turn. Turn 5 represents January 11th through 20th of 1940. An interesting event is selected this time. It's random, and that is called German intervention. So what's interesting about this, Germany isn't necessarily doing anything, but they've made overtures as to the fact that they may intervene in this. So this causes the Soviet command to have to pull some forces from the Winter War with Finland to be ready in case Germany does intervene. So 4 divisions and a tank battalion are diverted due to this event. So the Soviets continue their attacks. They are attacking the Mannerheim fortification. They launch a 2-pronged attack near the Finnish town of Kola again. And this is kind of the slow slog of this battle. And you can see in the picture here, the Finns are deploying, again, a screen unit near the Soviets along the road, so they're going to have to be stopped by that screen unit and deal with it, even though there will be no combat per se. We're now on to turn 6, January 21st through the 31st. Another foul weather event. So this is primarily, it takes all the air units down, but it primarily causes the Soviets to have a hard time with anything movement, combat, and supply. On the positive side, though, turn 6 is finally when the Soviets have gotten their act together as far as their training, and they can use the improved combat results table, which this will put them on the normal table that's being used by the Finns. In other words, a 2-to-1 attack is resolved at 2-to-1 now instead of 1-to-1. Additionally, the Soviets get 2 shock attack markers. These are unique, and they can be used in a couple of ways. For one, they double all the combat losses in a combat with a shock marker in it. But it also allows the Soviets to overstack a little bit. And this is a simulation of improved training and renewed preparation after they've learned the hard lessons of December. So that's pretty much what happens here. The Soviets continue in these same three areas that they've been going through for the entire game so far. They're attacking in the north, they're attacking in the center, and then they're attacking at the Mannerheim line. I don't have a picture for this turn, so we'll have to use our imagination. Okay, this is turn 7, February 1st through 10th of 1940, and we picked the foul weather event again. So again, all the penalties for the Soviets for the most part. Also, the Soviets get reinforcements, but one of them is interesting. It's an engineer tank unit. Now, this is a unique unit in the game. It simulates the experimental tanks that the Soviets used to try to break through the Mannerheim line fortifications. And in game terms, they're tanks that can't really take step losses from the Finnish defenders. So they're impervious to that. So they are a powerful asset for the Soviets. In the picture here, you can see along the road two Soviet infantry divisions, including the 54th Division, along with a tank, are attacking the Finnish 6th Infantry. And you can see the 17th Regiment there. This regiment is eventually eliminated in this battle, but the Soviets do lose a step in the meantime, but they capture this forest area along the road. Now we move on to turn 8, February 11th through 20th of 1940. And this time the event chit is Allied forces intervene. So the Finns are now going to receive some aid, and one of the aids that they're going to receive is an air unit, but also two Allied forces will also join them. In the picture here, you can see how the attack's going on the Mannerheim line, and you can see the 90th Division has pushed through, and a fair-sized section of the Mannerheim line is now compromised by the Soviets. Now we go to turn 9, which is February 21st to 29th of 1940. And in the picture here, you can see the attacks along the Mannerheim line, and that pretty much the Soviets have compromised this line. There's a lot of air power used down here, but the Finnish Air Force neutralized one of the Soviet ground support, and the British Volunteer Air Force contained the other one. You can also see in this picture two of the units that have different colorations. These are the Allied units that were added due to the Allied intervention. And one of them is on the front lines, is a ski unit. And so this is very handy for the Finns. This next picture shows the Soviets attempting to capture more of the railroad about 40 miles west of the town of Sortavala. And so slowly but surely the Finns are deteriorating. This next picture shows the Soviets capturing the town of Lieksa, again helping them to secure their push westward into Finland. And finally, in this next picture, it shows the Finnish 18th Regiment is reinforcing the town of Joensuu, and hopefully that will slow the Soviet advance down. I think they're running out of time. Now we move on to turn 10, which is March 1st through the 10th of 1940. Again, we have an event of foul weather. The air forces are grounded. The Soviets are hampered quite a bit. And you can see in this picture how the screen units can be used to disrupt Soviet, not only their movement, but their supply lines, as they can just appear out of nowhere in wooded or forested sections, especially along key places like railroads and roads. Anyway, we have a game end roll, which results in a political solution to this conflict. That Soviets have only 2 victory point locations, so the Finnish government is actually going to win a minor victory, and I believe that this is probably what the historical result was. They do technically win the war with the Soviets to some degree, but they're going to end up later on, as we know, fighting as part of the Axis and ultimately, losing the war. So that's the end of this game, and I hope you enjoyed looking through some of the photographs. So that was Molotovs War. A couple other comments I wanted to make about the game. It does have some errata, which you can find in S&T 174, I believe, which is the Indo-Pakistani War issue. It's also available on grognard.com, I think. Also, there was an article in Fire and Movement number 104 under Player's Notes on page 34. There's a short 2 or 3 page article on this game, which I found very interesting. It's a quick read. It's written by David Newport. So if you are interested in that, you might pick up this, or make a comment to me in the video if you want me to send you a PDF of that article. I could do that. Anyway, have a great day. Thanks for watching, and until next time.